Hello everyone. Well, the votes have it in regards to putting together a video on the basics of Lightburn and some settings that need to be checked before trying to burn something. I'm sure that for some of the new people getting started, Lightburn can be pretty scary. You open up the program and look at it and go, oh my goodness, what have I gotten into? What I hope to be able to do for you is share some of the basics to get you going in the right direction and take some of the scariness out of Lightburn. I am by no means an expert on the software. I am still learning also. And the things I'm going to cover, as I mentioned, are just the very basics. There are some settings that you'll need to check before you engrave anything. The first one we need to check is go to Edit and then go to Settings. And over here, you will see Better for Diode. Okay? You need to have millimeters per minute selected. And the difference is if you had it over here for CO2, that's millimeters per second. So if you're trying to burn something or engrave something and you had millimeters per second, and let's say you had it at 2000, there's a big difference between 2000 millimeters per second and 2000 millimeters per minute. And what would happen is that laser would be zipping around and it's not going to burn anything because it's moving way too fast. So make sure you have millimeters per minute selected under Better for Diode. Okay? And then the next one we're going to is Edit and then Device Settings. And you want to make sure that you have 410 by 420 set. Okay? And the rest of this we're not going to fool with right now. Okay, so just 410 by 420. And then on the laser window, we're going to set, this is the laser window here, and if you don't have it or don't see it, you can go to Window and click Laser, and it should pop up for you. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to have start from current position and job origin set to center. And what this is going to do for you is when you start Lightburn up and turn on your laser and everything, then you go and you move the laser around using the toggle buttons. I'll show you here. Okay, so when you move the laser around using these buttons, okay, and move it to the center-ish of the screen, of the work area on the engraver, okay, then you can put your piece under the laser and measure, use a little focus aluminum block thing and focus the laser, and then you center your piece underneath the laser so that as soon as you start the laser, what it's going to do is wherever you center that piece under the laser, that is the center of your project. Okay, I read a few posts where it's the laser started burning where the piece wasn't, and they ended up, damaging their desk or work area, things like that. And doing it this way will help you quite a bit because, like I said, you just center your piece of wood or leather or whatever you're working on, just center it under the laser and hit frame to make sure it's centered, and then hit start, and you should be good to go. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to take a look at is layers. What are they? How do they work? What are they used for? Um, Things like that. So, if anyone is familiar with desktop publishing, photo editing, things like that, you'll be familiar with the basics of how layers work in Lightburn. Um, but essentially, they keep one element of your project from interfering with another element. Okay, and that can be used in a few different ways. Okay, so let's go ahead and clear this off and make this a little bigger. Okay, so let's say I'm going to make a project, and my project is I'm using a 4-inch square from Amazon, a little 4-inch square piece of wood. So I'm gonna get a square up here, and now if you, some of you may know this, and some of you may not. When you try to make a square, okay, you you can make it long and thin. You can make a rectangle, things like that. But if you're trying to make just a square and you're trying to measure, to get it right, there's a couple different ways you can do it. Okay, um, so we'll show you here. Let me get rid of my little dot. All right. So now, if I'm going to select a square, if you hold down the Shift key, all right, and I'm going to make my square. Now you let go of the mouse. All right. Now what it did was it filled it in, and that's not what we want. So you come over here to under the layer and select mode right here and select line. So now you have just a square with using the line. Now if you want to set a size, okay, um, you're going to work in millimeters. So 4-inch square is like 110 millimeters, I think. But we'll just use 100. It's 101, excuse me. So we'll just use 100. And this lock over here, you'll notice it's locked. And what that does is that keeps your aspect ratio the same for the height and the width. It's not so much a problem when you're using a square, but when you have an image or a picture or something like that, I'll explain it in the next section how this uh, lock would come in handy. Okay, so we have our square that we're going to use. Okay, so now we can go ahead and put some text. Okay, put some text in our square, and let's move it over to the middle. Okay, it's not going to fit, so just bring it down just a little bit. Okay, so now we have that. Now, you may have noticed or may have not noticed that we created a problem, because right now we're talking about layers, and this hello and our square that we're using for a reference are on the same layer. So what that means is if I go to um, go to burn this, I don't necessarily want my square to burn on my piece of wood. So what I want to do is I want to come over here to output and turn that off. Okay, so now if I go to my preview, I have nothing to preview because everything's turned off. So because we put hello on the same layer as our boundary square, it's not going to work. So the way to fix that is you come over here and you highlight it so that it's selected, and then just give it a different layer. Okay, so now you can turn off the output square and preview, and there you go. And you just see the hello and you don't see the square. Alright, so the square can help you as far as lining things up, centering, things like that. So let's say we're just keeping it very simple in this section. I'm gonna make a circle, and let's say I wanted that circle to be centered in this square. Okay, and this will work with text, shapes, SVG images, vector images, whatever. It'll work with all of that. So what we want to do is have the object selected, then holding the shift key, select the, got to be in the pointer, holding down the shift key, select that. And you can tell that both of them are selected by the dash marks on the outline. I'll zoom in a little bit. Well, that doesn't help. But you can kind of see the dash marks on the object. So now both of these are selected. If I come up here and click this one, what that's going to do is it's going to align it vertically to the center of the square. Alright, and then if I come over here to this one, you can horizontally center it. So whatever shape you have selected, and you select whatever shape you want centered, when you click these up here, it will center the item. So if I didn't want it centered horizontally, I could still, I can still move my object. Okay, let's say I just want it centered vertically right there. Again, just hold down the shift key, select it, and vertically centered. And as I said, that will work with any shape, image, anything like that you can center. Now, something else that the layers can do is you have what they call a cut layer. In Lightburn, it doesn't say cut, but you have line. And with line, what you can do is you can set the speed and power of that line. So if you want it to be a cut line, you would increase your power and how many passes that you want. Okay, so if I want 5 passes or 6 passes, whatever, and I set my power and my speed. And what that will do is that will set you up for it to be, your object to be cut out. So now if I do it this way, let's say my layer is, I have my line first and my little circle that I'm going to burn into my piece of wood. Now, set up this way, if we look at the preview, okay, and I rewind it, see if you can figure out what's going to happen. So we're just going to kind of go through and just keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. Okay. Now, you may have noticed that it drew the boundary box or the box first, or the cut line first, and then drew the circle. That's not a good thing, because if you have your piece raised up and you do the cut line first, the piece is going to fall away before it drew the circle. So that wouldn't be a good thing. So what you can do in that case is you have your little arrow here and just click it, and what that does is that's going to reverse the order. So now if I look at it again, you'll see that it's going to draw the circle, okay, and then draw the square. So that way, in that order, you're not going to, the piece isn't going to fall through before you had a chance to engrave on it. Okay, so that's kind of some of the basics with the layers. Also, the layers in the order they are is the way that it's going to engrave your piece. And like I said, you can use this arrow key to shift the order, or you can just highlight it and bring it down. No, I'm sorry. You need to use the arrow keys. So whatever one's highlighted, that's the one you're moving. Okay. So then, next we're going to talk about how to create a project in Lightburn, just using some of the basic features and bringing in an SVG image. Okay, so next we're going to talk about using Lightburn to create a little project. Again, this is just the very, very basics, just to get you started. Alright, so we have our square. This is our boundary box, in other words. And it's 100 by 100, so it's a little under 4 inches square. So now, let's just say I have an image that I want to use for this square little block that I'm going to engrave. So I've searched around on the internet and I found an image I want to use. So I'm going to paste it right here. Okay. So now I select it and move it. Okay. So we have it ready to go, right? So now if I look at it, I mean, it looks fine, but if I look at it, what the preview would be, okay, that's not going to look good. You got all these little stray dots over here, and then you have all these over here. So that's not going to work for us. Okay, so the way to fix that is we're going to trace it. Okay, I don't know if y'all have used trace before, but it's a really handy tool. So we're going to come over here under Tools and come down to Trace. And you can look at it. You'll see all the little purple outline, and that looks fine. Typically, you don't have to fiddle with the settings in Trace. So we say OK. So now what we can do is we can move the image away and delete it because we don't need it. Now if we look at this and look at the preview, you'll see that now there's no little jagged dots everywhere. Okay, it's all clean and there's no dots over here. So now this is ready to burn if you wanted to. Okay, but we're going to add some text to our project. Okay, so we're going to move this out, and we're going to come over here and select this and kind of move it up, and we're going to resize it just a little bit. Okay, alright, so we'll do that. Now if you notice over here, like I mentioned earlier, you have this lock and the aspect ratio. What that does is if you unlocked this, okay, that will allow you to change these settings independently of each other. Now, if I wanted this to fit on my 4-inch square and I wasn't going to do anything else, what I would do is I would take the bigger of the two, okay, and I could change that to 100. And if you look at the aspect ratio, it changed it to 73 by 100, so it's not perfectly square, which is fine. And what that did was that kept the ratio so that your lion didn't get stretched vertically or horizontally. Okay, just like if you were editing a photo, you would keep the aspect ratio so that the person's face doesn't get stretched up or down. All right, so that's why you want to keep that locked sometimes. But other times, you may not need it locked. But for this project, we're going to have it locked. And I'm going to shrink it down a little bit. And I can come over here and, like I showed you earlier, have it selected, and then I can click on my, hang on, I'll go here. I can click on one second. Oh, haha. Why it wasn't working is because I didn't have my box selected. See, I'm still learning, and I do forget things sometimes. So, alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to select our box and hold shift down and select our lion at the same time, and then I can align it to the center. Okay. Alright, so now we got that. Now if I wanted to add some text to this, I could do that. And I can type B lion. Now if I come back up to my arrow, I can shrink this down and I can do that. Now, again, you'll notice that the text and the lion are on the same layer. And Sometimes it's fine to do that, but sometimes it may not be because you may want the lion a darker setting than your text. So the easy way to do that, to get it on a different layer, is just to have it selected and then just click the new layer. Just down here with all these colored numbers. Just click the new layer, and I'm going to change it from line to fill and line, and I'll explain the difference between the two. And so now we have our what we want to say. All right. So now what we're going to do is we're going to center all this up. So I want to click my click my box, hold down the shift key, click the text. So the text is outlined. All right. And then come up here and say vertically center the text. Okay, so now that's all ready to go. So now if you look at this under the thing, so that's what it's going to look like when we send it to the laser to burn. Okay, so that's just a real simple project, and just covering some of the basics. And I'll cover a few more things here in just a second. Um, to explain the difference between line, fill, fill, and line, those are the three that I'm familiar with. Okay, so line again is just like the blue line here. Okay, fill and line, what that's going to do is that's going to fill it in. Okay, where you see the red. Then where the line part of it, what it's going to do, let me just change this to line and you'll see. So what it's going to do is the laser is going to come around and it's going to cut on the line. So what that does is when you look at your piece that you burned, the wherever it engraved, it's going to be nice and sharp. There's not going to be any rough edges. So it's almost like it cut it. Um, if you were to just do a fill and line, you'd definitely be able to see the difference. So if you want it to look really sharp, use, as I said, use fill and line, and that will make it look really cool for you, like nice and sharp. And one of the other, I'm going to go ahead and delete these. One of the other tools that's kind of fun to play around with, and you can get some really neat patterns and stuff with it, is this tool right here, circular array tool. So how that works is you can use it to help you out too. Like I created the other day the alignment tool. Let's see if I've got it set up here. Yeah. I created the alignment tool using the array feature. What the array feature does is it turns around whatever your center part is. So we'll show you that here. Let me go ahead and get rid of this, and I'll show you how to do it. Alright, so if we create any, you can create any shape and use it as an array. So let's just do this. I'm going to change the color here, change the layer so you see it better. Alright, 1 second. Change it to red. Alright, so we have just a basic shape. Okay. Now what we do is we create a circle. Come down here and create a circle. And then move the circle closer to the other shape. Okay. Now if we select, you have to do the shape first that you want to go around the other shape. And I'll show you the difference. Okay, so if I select this shape, and I want it to go around this shape. Now if I click the array tool, you see what happened. So it went like 9 times around. And then if you change the copy number, you can change how many times it goes around. Then what you can do is if you say you're done with that, so if you say fill, that's what it fills in as, and if you look at it, that's what it would burn like. Okay, so if I clicked, I can do an undo. Okay, Control Z is a very helpful feature. Control Z does the last step. It undoes the last step that you did. Okay, so now remember I said that you click first what you want to go around. In other words, like the pivot point. So if I were to click the circle first, okay, then hold the shift down and click that and click the array tool, I come up with a totally different pattern. Okay, so the elongated shape here didn't move because my circle now pivoted around it. Okay, and I can bring the steps down. Okay, so I can do something like that. So that's kind of a neat tool to play with. So what you can do if you're going to make let's say you're going to make a coaster or something like that. So you get this and you want to do that. And you can go ahead and edit what this looks like easily by going and having it selected, and go to Edit, Convert to Path. Okay. And what that will do when you come over here down to this one where it shows the nodes, okay, edit nodes, it shows you each point of the object. So now you can take that and you can stretch it out, you can pull it up or whatever you want to do. Okay, so I want to, let's say, do something like this. And bring this over here. And you can use the background grid to kind of make sure everything's centered. Okay, so we're going to do this. I know I made another odd shape. Okay, so now what we can do is come over here and create another circle. Alright, so now let's go back to my arrow, move the circle up to here. Okay, so now let's just see what it's going to do. So I want to click on this shape, and the second shape that I click on is what it's going to pivot around. So I click that and come over here to the tool, and now you have something kind of neat. Okay, and you can turn up the how many times it goes around. Now if I were to fill that, click here, if I were to fill that, now you have kind of a neat little coaster to make. And you can do a edit, select all, go into arrange and group. Okay, so now when you select it, you're selecting the whole thing, and you will be able to now resize it to whatever size you need. Okay, so now that should be enough to kind of get you started in the right direction. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask me. You can leave a comment, or you can also go to my group on Facebook. It's the official Sculpt Fun Users group. Official group for Sculpt Fun users. And as you see, we at this point we have 98 members, and it's a really neat group to be involved with. So if you have any questions, you can go to official group for Sculpt Fun users, or you can leave questions in the comments. All right. Thank you for taking time to watch the video, and I hope you have a great day.